I'd like to talk about the population explosion. This is an extreme event in which we are currently right in the middle of. I came to this problem because I was trying to understand healthcare as a system. And as I was studying this problem, it became more and more apparent to me that in order to understand healthcare, I needed to understand the consequences of people being born and dying. So my trainings as a physicist, unfortunately, I like to start at the beginning. So that's what I'm going to talk about, love and death. Here is the human population size over a number of years. I'm sure you've seen this figure many times. Right around 1000 AD, the population started taking off in a big way. So that it's such a grand increase that in my memory, in my personal memory, I remember the population being 3 billion people. And currently the population of the planet's about 7 billion people. So there was a doubling time in less than the time of my memory. So, although you've seen this picture many times, I want to point out a couple things about it. One is, this is rising and rising. Can't rise forever. How does it stop? Well, it could stop if we get so many people on the planet that we become a great biological medium and a virus takes us all out and the insects come and occupy our niche. Or it can end if we have a great war, World War X, and the population is taken out and the dinosaurs recover their niche from 65 million years ago. But the demographers have been looking at this problem, and they have one more possible scenario they call the demographic transition. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But before I do, I'd like to point out where the surprise is in this graph. You might think the surprise is this sudden rise in population, but not to me. The surprise is this flat part. And the reason it's a surprise is that a typical birth rate is three babies per 1,000 population every year, or 30 babies rather, per person every year. Now, if you have a birth rate and a death rate that are much different, one would see volatility like this all the way into the past. But the doubling rate down here is only a couple hundred years. So for a couple hundred years, that means that the birth rate and the death rate have to be equal to each other to within about 10%. So what's going on here? The adaptable quantity here is fertility. Fertility is the number of children that a woman has in a lifetime. So if there are no childhood deaths, people live to their natural lifespan, their replacement rate for a woman is 2 children. One for her mate. Okay. Well, what this flat part means is that the fertility of a woman must stay within its equilibrium value, that is the replacement value or replacement value with childhood deaths, to within 10%. Now, that to me is resilience. What's going on here? Why is human fertility so very adaptive to the death rate? Well, it could be biology. There could be biological mechanisms, hormones. Could be sociological mechanisms. And there could be economic mechanisms. But, I'm new to this field, and I've read a number of papers, and I haven't seen any that are convincing in any of those arguments. So that's the question. That's the problem we're addressing. Fertility is amazingly resilient. So let me move on to the demographic transition. The demographers propose a third, less cataclysmic solution to the population explosion. They noted that, looking at the various time series of data for various countries, that a transition to increase population size, was precipitated by a decrease in death rate. So, in particular, the decrease in death rate is a decrease in childhood death rate. So, what's happening is, all of a sudden, within a lifetime, in many, many countries at various times, the childhood death rate has plummeted, has gone very low. And then what happens is the children survive and they procreate and the birth rate goes up. But then suddenly what happens, this fertility mechanism, this unknown fertility mechanism kicks in and starts taking the birth rate down again. And during this period, the birth rate exceeds the death rate and the population grows, maybe overshoots, and then comes back to a new equilibrium. So this fertility process is monitoring the change in the population size from one equilibrium state to another equilibrium state. And very important and particularly now for Europe, is there's an overshoot in the population size before it comes back down, and I'll explain what this means in just a minute. This is a plot of all the countries in the world, and what I have on this axis is the birth rate divided by the fertility rate and the death rate plotted on a log scale. And on this axis, what I have plotted is the life expectancy times twice the median age. So basically, what this axis describes is how old the population is. So if the life expectancy is greater than twice the median age, then it's a young population. The median age is small, then it's a young population, and that's this half of the graph. If the life expectancy over the median age is small, then the median age is large. This ratio is small. Then you're in this half of the graph. Now, I've plotted all the countries in the world on here. And it looks like a big mess, but there's actually some order to it. There's some order to it. And the order, what I have plotted here is a simple model. I won't go into what the model is, but what the model predicts is that there is a flow in this space. It's counterclockwise or anticlockwise, if you're English. In this direction. So it makes a big swirling motion. And here is Europe. All of Europe, from Iceland to the Urals, is right here. Here is what demographers condescendingly refer to as offshoot countries, including the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, along with we're getting into some Asian countries. Here's China, here's India. Korea, incidentally, is right in here. Up here we have Latin American countries. This is very interesting. These are all the oil countries. And all these countries right here are sub-Saharan African countries. And the large red dots are members of the OECD, and the small crosses are not members of the OECD. So the red dots tend to be more advanced countries. So basically, we can use this simple kind of modeling to get some sense of what might happen next with the population. And I'm running out of time, so I'll skip ahead. What I've described is the demographic transition, but there are two other things that seem very correlated with this demographic transition. The demographic transition of moving the population to a new plateau, the demographic transition predicts an aging of the population, which is due to the overshoot I mentioned. One thing that seems to be strongly correlated with this change, this transition, is urbanization. And again, I read all the demographers, and I can't make sense of why people are choosing to move to cities as a consequence. Could be economic. I mean, most of the arguments are economic arguments. Could be sociological. But right now, we're getting towards half the world's population lives in cities. But if you take all the world's population and put it into a single megacity, approximately the density of New York City, it would take up an area the size of France. So if you're looking for a place to stand on the planet, there's still plenty of room to stand, although the other resources on the planet may be more taxed. But what we're entering into seems to be an era of megacities, and has something to do with this transition. The other correlation that seems strongly correlated is movement from a religious society to a secular society. You can plot the religiosity, if that's a variable, on the chart I shown. And if you're early in the transition, countries seem to be very religious. By the time they get into Europe, they become very secular. Okay, well, the main takeaways here are resilience. The resilience seems to be some kind of emergent natural phenomena that's occurring. It's occurring all the time, like Anna suggested it might. It's occurring when there's no transition going on. It seems to be some mechanism that's not controlled. It's not human-made. And the resilience is driving us back to a new equilibrium rather than an insect-controlled equilibrium. Okay, thank you very much.